Prepare yourself for List Off, the gaming podcast where your hosts, Brian and Ryan, rank the things they love. 3, 2, 1, List Off!
This week, everyone in the party huddle up and get ready for your turn to attack because we are going through our top 5 JRPGs. How's it going, Ryan?
Good start, Brian, for sure.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. That's one of the hallmarks of a JRPG. So it was fitting.
Absolutely.
And so we've got our top 5 JRPGs, and we also have a guest this week to guide us through. And we have Julia here to talk about her top 5 JRPGs as well. How's it going, Julia?
It's going great. I'm really excited. JRPGs are my favorite style of game. So
very good. That's
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we usually go over what we played this week, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself to start off here? Just why you might be familiar with, JRPGs or at least, what they represent.
Yeah, so I'm Julia. I work at a manga publishing company. So I'm very familiar with many things from Japan. So we do manga. We also have an anime side to our business. I don't actually work there, but I do know a lot of people who work in the anime side. And we do publish the Persona 5 manga as well. So that's really fun
cool.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so does that have to be on your list? Is that because you no, I'm just kidding. Don't give anything away.
I mean, it would be, but there are other reasons that it might be on my list. So.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Very cool. So what'd you play this week? Did you play any games, or have you been playing any recently?
Yeah, I spent all of this week playing Animal Crossing because it just got its last big update. So I, for some reason, decided I was going to level my entire island and start over. Oh. And I got done with the leveling part of it and have not built anything. But I also got the expansion, the Happy Homes Paradise, and that's been super, super fun.
Did you buy that expansion by itself, or did you get the Switch Online?
I already had the Switch Online, so then I just got the expansion.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because they have a package now where you get the Nintendo 64 games and all that, along with, you would have got the DLC on top of it, but you probably made the right call.
As soon as you get Switch Online, you also get all of those Nintendo 64 games. Oh. Just always. So sweet. I have those as well. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah.
So have you gotten to that content yet? The actual new DLC for Animal Crossing?
Oh yeah, it's super fun. This is my first Animal Crossing game. I never played any of the old ones. And so apparently it's very similar to some of the old ones, but for me, it's totally fresh and new. You get to go, and little villagers will ask you to design them a vacation home. Oh, and they'll give you a theme. And then you get a bunch of options for furniture and wallpaper and trees to put outside. And then it's kind of like Sims meets Animal Crossing, because you just get to go crazy and design based on their style and their tastes.
Very cool. Sounds like chores to me.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Well, it's probably the best way to approach it being your first Animal Crossing, because I played the one on the GameCube to death. So getting into the new one was a little tougher. I'm I feel like I've done all this before, but that actually sounds like something new. You're not just creating your own living space. You're actually designing for other people. That's neat. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had a similar type of Animal Crossing for 3DS. It was Happy Home Designer. It wasn't as robust as what this new one is, but my wife had played through that one on the 3DS and really liked it. So I'm sure she would like this one too.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then through doing all of that, you get updated furniture and exclusive items for your own house too. So it's pretty fun to check out. They have a little store that's only for people who are designing the other homes. And I got a chandelier. So I was really excited about my chandelier.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many rooms is your home? Oh. Sorry.
My house is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms.
Wow.
I have
lap of luxury.
Yes, I have an upstairs, a basement, and then 3 rooms off the main room in the main floor.
Living large.
Yeah.
Good job.
Sweet. Did you play any other games this week?
I played one that's in the list, so I'm
Okay.
not going to talk about it yet.
Fair
Okay.
enough. Fair enough.
And then I played Tetris. I'm constantly playing Tetris. That's just like my stress reliever.
That's
Nice.
the perfect video game.
Yep.
Do you play Tetris 99 or do you just play like what's the big one now? Tetris
Just
Connected.
connected.
Yeah.
I switch
Tetris
between
Effect.
them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
Tetris.
I have it on my Switch, so I play on my Switch a lot. But then I also got the Tetris app on my phone, and that's really nice too.
Yeah.
So there's a few
Perfect.
different modes on there for you to play.
Definitely.
That's sweet. Awesome. So, Ryan, any games for you this week?
Yeah, I did. I played, much like Julia, I played a game that I will not be mentioning till later in the episode, but I also played Forza Horizon 5, which just dropped on Game Pass a few days ago at the time of recording. It's incredibly beautiful game, just looks amazing. I noticed something when I'm driving. You're driving by these buildings on the side of the road at like 150 miles per hour, but they put detail on the interior of the buildings. Like you could look through the windows and there are shelves in the shops and books on the shelves, and it all looks 3D, not like a 2D image, which is kind of like, why? But also it adds that little bit of detail is everywhere, and it adds so much to the whole experience. Yeah, it's incredibly fun. Even aimlessly driving around, just exploring the map and picking up events here and there to jump into with no real goal. Just, oh, this race seems interesting, let me get in that. Or, you know, this mission seems interesting, let me get into that. That's where I'm having the most fun with it. I could definitely see myself picking it up for shorter playing sessions for a very long time. It's not the sort of game I could pour hours and hours into at once, but I could definitely pick it up, play it for a half an hour, have a great time with it, and move on. I think it's incredible. It's really an incredible racing game. It did make me kind of question if I'm into racing games anymore,
Right?
Because it's very good and everything about it is fun, but I'm like, it's also still just a racing game. And I know people are going to hate me for saying that.
I mean, racing is one of those genres that's like you
Right.
kind of have to be into it to enjoy it.
And I love my kart racers. Like Mario Kart is incredible. It's just different. It isn't realistic. It is arcadey, but it's not like I'm shooting, turtle shells at people or anything like that. I will say they do have somewhat of a storyline playing throughout, but it's very minor. I've heard complaints about the prior games in the series having the story being kind of intrusive and just like nonsensical at times, all about your social media profile and getting a bunch of likes and just kind of like when older people try to act like, hey, I know what's cool, kids, right? But this doesn't suffer from that. It's very background noise. There almost isn't even a story at all. It's just like, you're a guy who's good at racing and people want to talk to you because you're good at racing, and that's pretty much it. So I did appreciate that. It just kind of was like, hey, here's the world, go have fun. And it is a lot of fun to drive around that world. So yeah, enjoying it. I'll probably play more of it. I also just downloaded the GTA San Andreas remaster. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I don't know if you've been seeing what people are saying online, but it is not apparently what they thought it would be.
Really? In what way?
Apparently there's some graphical issues. People are making fun of some of the character models and a little bit of jank when it comes to like their hands, because they have fingers now. So I've just seen a few things posted where, it is very minor stuff. Overall, I'm sure the gameplay is great. I'm sure the story hasn't changed. So I do expect to go in and enjoy it. But people are definitely having a good laugh at the expense of some of like the facial models and things like that.
Sure. Do you see yourself picking up the $60 trilogy, or you're just going to try the Game Pass one and see how it goes?
I mean, I also feel like San Andreas isn't the one I want to play.
Right.
GTA 3 is the one I want to play. That's the one that meant the most to me in my personal gaming life. So if anything, I might pick up a month of PlayStation Now to play it. I can't really see myself buying this at $60. I anticipated it'll go on sale, maybe even by Black Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if it's cheap enough, I'll get it. But yeah, I'm not spending $60 on it.
I heard the PC port is having just rough issues just running in general.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
yeah,
Those like 20-year-old games, man, they give
I
computers
know.
nowadays a lot of problems, apparently.
right.
Yeah. So did you play any games?
I did. So I finally picked up Guardians of the Galaxy, just because everyone's been talking about it. And I am so happy I did, because I didn't have this on my radar at all, but everyone has just been saying how awesome it is. And it lives up to everything that I've heard.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. The gameplay is really fun. I mean, I think people were kind of down on it as not one of the highlights of it, but I really enjoy it. It has that kind of like tactical feel to it, where you're commanding the different, other Guardians to help you in battle.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the regular Star-Lord controls and gameplay associated there is a lot of fun. Gives you enough like active reload and abilities of your own to kind of implement during battle. And the non-stop talking is actually pretty fun.
It's all good. Like the dialogue is all really good. I forgot to bring it up last week when I was talking about the game, but what do you think about the huddle system?
That's cool. I've only done it like
too.
2 times. I don't even know when it like activates. I just saw it like, hey, you should probably use this right now. But yeah, the cool thing there certainly is the music just kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
Some random 80s song is just blasting. And then so you kind of have to decide how to like hype up your team. And since I've only done it twice, I haven't really had much like, I guess, bad stuff happen during that. Everyone seems like they're doing what they need to do, and the game kind of tells you like, hey, you'll always get some sort of bonus from this, even if you don't hype everyone up to the full extent.
Right.
But definitely just the music itself,
I know,
works so well.
You'll come out of this huddle, you'll be in the middle of battle. I don't know if have you played the game, Julia?
No, I haven't. I didn't actually know this existed.
Oh,
so now I'm excited because it sounds
none
cool.
of us really did.
Came out of nowhere
2 months ago.
But you'll be in the heat of battle, and you'll huddle up and kind of say this pep talk, and you'll come out and like Careless Whisper will be playing. And it's
amazing.
It's typically not the most fitting song, which I think is just adds even more comedy to the situation. It's great.
Do you get to choose like the Star-Lord quips as you're going, or does he just kind of rattle stuff up?
Kind of. So that there will be points in the story where all the other Guardians are talking about things, and you'll get opportunities to kind of chime in. And it's usually like 2 choices, like side with one Guardian, or like side with Gamora on some issue, or side with Rocket. And that can have some repercussions. It has kind of that telltale, like Rocket will remember that and like is agitated that you did something.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yes. That's about as far as I'm at right now. Cool. But yeah, the game is absolutely beautiful. I did have some stuttering, and I'm like, my computer should be handling this. I just had to download the drivers, and then all the problems were fixed. But this game absolutely looks beautiful, plays really great. And the one thing I will say is I think I'm moving a little too fast sometimes, where I don't get all of the dialogue that like they'll be in the middle of kind of like a thought, and then we'll just move on because I like triggered some point,
a cutscene or something.
Exactly.
So
that's a little frustrating, but
did you meet, like, this isn't a spoiler, I think the advertising has shown Lady Hellbenders in the game.
That's where I'm at right now. Like
the journey to get there, I really, really love what they did. Like as you're walking up to her fortress.
Right.
I love that. I thought that was so cool. Like incredibly done. Yeah. Anyway.
That was one thing I wanted to bring up actually, because Peter actually says, whoa, top 10 fortresses. So I was like, list idea.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the same thing. There's a point in the game actually way later where they say butt clenching or butt clencher.
Yes.
And I took a screenshot of it and I was going to post it, but I'm like, man, that's kind of like some of the things in the image are spoilery, so I can't do it.
I gotcha.
But that's, if you don't know, Julia, that's a running thing on this podcast is, video games tend to have those moments that are very tense and they're butt clenching. Yeah, we've all played video games.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I've been having a lot of fun with that. And then the only other game that I watched my wife play was Unpacking. That's
cool.
another Game Pass game. So if you're unfamiliar with this, it is literally just a pixel looking room, and you get these cardboard boxes, and then you just click the box, and then an item comes out, and then you put it away wherever it's supposed to go. So it's a very zen game where you're just unpacking and putting everything in the room. It has a storyline because each room that you go into, it'll say the year. So it's like 95 and then like 98, 2002. And you can kind of get a story of who your character is based on everything that is in these boxes and that you're unpacking. And I think that's pretty cool. It's a really subtle way to kind of tell a story. There's no dialogue. You don't have a character. You're just like a disembodied mouse cursor, basically. But you can see like, oh, she brought her stuffed animal like with her to college, and like there's obviously a story there. There was one photo, it looks like it's her and her mom, and like you post it everywhere on bulletin boards throughout her life. But then like the only place that it can go is like in her drawer somewhere at some point. So like there's some turmoil there that you can kind of suss out. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's very zen. Like you will, if you're stressed out, it's a good game to just like get control of your life and put things in order.
Sounds neat.
Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like, I remember when I was younger, we used to get game demos in our cereal boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And there'd be like very simple games that were just very relaxing. One of them was literally just stapling a stapler. And you just had to keep stapling paper. But yeah, that reminds me of that kind of just like old school, calming, simple game.
Yeah.
Everything has
I was
its place.
Impressed with it. What's that?
I said everything has its place.
Exactly.
That's a very good feeling sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like doing chores, like you mentioned before. But when the game tells you did a good job, that really means something. All right. Well, if that's all we've been playing, I think we should get into these lists. So let's begin. So yeah, Julia, you want to take us away with your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is very embarrassing because it's Final Fantasy VII Remastered. And the reason it's my honorable mention is because I thought I was buying the Final Fantasy VII remake, but it was not the remake. It was the remastered. So it was basically a port of maybe the original or maybe like a newer version into the Switch. It was very, very old school. And I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't grow up playing video games. And so I'm much more used to like the modern style. And so I was playing it and I was like, man, everyone keeps telling me how cool this game is, how cool it is for new players. Why am I not getting this? And then I finally saw a picture of the actual Final Fantasy VII remake. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Quite a big difference graphically, I'm sure, right?
Oh my God, a huge difference. Yeah. I was playing with like a little spiky, pixely dude who you like go into the system to equip your I've forgotten what they're called, but the little spirits that help you in battle. Mm-hmm. And it looks like I was playing on a Mac Classic or something. Like I was so mind boggled by why this was not what I thought it was going to be. But I will say it was still really fun. I didn't get very far because I was getting frustrated, but it was fun.
It's crazy how we have like specific terms like remaster and remake. And yeah, it would be hard to like discern those if you don't know exactly which one is which. So that's frustrating.
Materia? Is that what it is? Materia? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I think so.
You know, a lot of people would say you got the better version of the game. There are a lot of people who don't. The remake did make some changes. Changes I personally appreciated, but there are many out there who did not. So I think you definitely got a good game.
Yeah, I just need to like put some elbow grease into it and learn the formatting of it because I was very confused.
It's a blast from the past for sure. Yeah, it's a little different. So you want to go next, Brian, or is it me?
No, let's see you.
Okay. All right, here we go. My number 6 is the game Landstalker for the Sega Genesis. Have you guys even heard of this game?
No.
Not at all.
The Genesis, not a system that's known for a lot of good RPGs, but there are some really, really good ones on the system. The one that I am choosing to talk about is Landstalker because it means something to me personally. I remember staying up, my best friend growing up, Chris, he had a barn behind his house. And this barn was like fashioned into a guest room, basically. And we would go and hang out in there, as like rowdy preteens, teenagers, and maybe raid his parents' liquor cabinet. If they're listening, it's a maybe. Okay. We stayed up all night playing this game and we had no idea what to expect. It is an isometric kind of action RPG with even with platforming elements. So it played really well. It was very engaging. The gameplay was great. You play as the main character is called Nigel. Very cool character, kind of like a treasure hunter. So the dialogue was really good and it was very lighthearted, not heavy like some of the RPGs that were coming out around that time is where they really started to get very heavy and especially after that. But the game does a good job with like subtle world building. For instance, it's like, hey, you're Nigel, you're 88 years old and he's a young guy though. So there's just these little hints about different races that inhabit the world and how they age, and it's never like thrown in your face or told through exposition. It's just like, here it is, this is how the world operates, like go experience it. And I remember really appreciating that at the time. And it's a lighthearted story. It's about finding a treasure, and at the end, if you're successful, you do find the treasure. So kind of lower stakes than a lot of RPGs, but it's also nice to have those lower stakes. There's a lot that happens between you and that treasure that have bigger implications on the world, but the journey starts innocently enough.
That seems interesting. I have never heard of it and don't think of the Genesis as an RPG machine at all. You look at the Super Nintendo and it's like, oh, there's dozens, but
right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh.
Yeah. So this night in particular, we were out there playing this game and it was like, we were up to like 3 a.m. and we heard someone outside the barn.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we freaked out and like ran into his home. So it's also like kind of for the memories.
Did you find out who it was? What happened?
No.
Was it a murderer?
I don't know.
Maybe
it could have
just
been
a deer.
I don't know. It could have been. It could have been
Maybe
anything.
it was
could have
a
been like a
Landstalker.
raccoon. It was right. I mean, maybe it was like something from the game. Maybe it was a golem. I don't know. Don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we made it out alive. I'm here today
Okay.
to tell the tale. So
That's
that's what
good.
matters. Yeah.
Jeez. That's scary. All right. Well, then getting to my honorable mention is Fire Emblem Awakening. So this was the 3DS game. It came out of nowhere for me. I had not been looking at Fire Emblem ever. It was the first one of these types of games that I played. I guess Advance Wars is kind of the predecessor, but then Fire Emblem is the predecessor to Advance Wars. So I don't really know where it starts, but
Wait, which one was first? Fire
so
Emblem?
I mean, Fire Emblem in general
Right.
was in Japan first and didn't come over here until like way after
Right.
it was in Melee for Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
So we didn't even really know about it until then. But I think Fire Emblem predates Advance Wars. I'm pretty sure. But this one was definitely when they have kind of perfected the formula. And this was one of many of this type of game that they went on to produce afterwards. I think there was like a sequel on 3DS that was like 3 different games. And it had kind of that Pokemon, like, well, you can do this in these games and have these characters in these games. But this one was really cool. It had the same style of gameplay as, in Advance Wars, where you're taking turns and kind of moving along the map on the grid. And I just really enjoyed the combat that ensued. It would kind of zoom into that side-by-side view, very similar to Advance Wars, where your characters were just attacking. And I love the strategy of it. I mean, we've talked about Advance Wars and how much it's like, 4D chess or however you want to bill it. But there's so much that goes into it. And it was the first game where you had the characters that could die. And if you played in that mode, if you lost your character, you lost that character forever and you couldn't retain them. So you were building relationships, and they've done that kind of thing in other Fire Emblems to date as well. But it was really cool. And I think the Fire Emblem on Switch, not as much for me. That one seemed way more about the relationships and walking around the town and getting everyone on your side. And then there was a little bit of fighting. So I think I like this distilled version a little more.
Yeah. And plus, like, your first experience with a certain type of gameplay goes a long way sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. So I think, between this genre, like Fire Emblem's setting versus something like Advance Wars, I tend to like Advance Wars more, but I really liked the gameplay of Fire Emblem Awakening.
So is Advance Wars a JRPG? Because I need to change my list if it is.
See, I don't know about that. I mean,
it's not. I don't think it is. I had these questions when I was making my list, but I left it. I left it out for right. There's a lot that it's kind of an RPG and it was made in Japan. So right.
My list is pretty willy-nilly with the rules.
I think
that's all right. Yeah, it's totally fine. I did forget my disclaimer. I guess I could say it now before we get into our actual list. I have not played Persona. I have not played any Kingdom Hearts. I have not played many other huge JRPG franchises. So I have limited expectations for my list, but please, you could judge me accordingly. So there you go. That's my
kind of the same for me. So I think we'll come up with some games though.
Yeah.
All right, Julia, take it away with the list.
All right. Number 5 is not actually a JRPG coming off of that, but it is from a series of JRPGs. And I thought it was going to be a JRPG, and so did most other people. And it is Paper Mario Origami King. Oh. So the other Paper Marios play as JRPGs, but this one does not.
Oh, I didn't know that.
However, it's kind of cool. You know, the whole leveling system and everything. And Paper Mario Origami King sort of has those elements, but one of the major things with an RPG is that the decisions you make could change the story. Could change what people you see, what events might happen, what the ending might be, and that does not happen at all in Origami King. It's a very, very step-by-step story as you go along. However, it is so fun. It is such a good game. I'm already halfway through my second playthrough. Nice. It's the story of this origami prince who decides that he wants to take over the Paper Mario world, and flat Mario and flat creatures are not good enough for him, so he's folding everyone into origami. And once they get folded, yes, exactly. It's kind of graphic because when they're folding them, they make sounds of pain the whole time. No. It's pretty intense. And once they are folded into origami, they become evil. So my favorite thing about this game is they're actually working with Bowser and all his minions the whole game to try to defeat the Origami King. So it's really fun. You're bopping around with a Koopa Troopa just trying to take down the Origami King. And every boss battle is a office supply. So you fight a tin of colored pencils, you fight a ball of rubber bands, and cool. It's just awesome. The way the world looks, it's all made out of paper and there's holes in it, and you fix it by throwing confetti onto it. And it's just so well thought through. The whole aesthetic, the mechanics, every piece of it fits together really nicely.
That's awesome. No, that sounds great. It makes sense that when they're folded into origami, they turn evil, because I get pretty grumpy when I do yoga. So that lines up pretty well.
Right.
Exactly.
I will
say. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I really wanted to play this game. It was on my radar for a while, but never got around to it.
You should put it back on your radar and get around to it. It's so good. Sure. The battling system is a little not so good, but for me, the rest of the game was good enough that I didn't mind that the battles were... I wouldn't say they're bad. They're just tedious. So,
No, it's good. It's a good pick. And you know why it's a good pick? Because my number 5 is Paper Mario and the 1,000-Year Door.
Nice.
This was the Paper Mario for the GameCube. This is, in fact, a JRPG. And one thing I forgot to mention in my disclaimer is that I love turn-based RPGs. I just feel like they're much less stressful than everybody operating on like some sort of timing to get your energy back up. And, you know, that to me is like a messy combat system in an RPG. That's for something like an action game. In an RPG, I want it to be my turn and then your turn. That's how it should be. I don't know why.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just like that's the system I grew up with. And I'm usually pretty adaptable with most things, but I'm a stickler for that. So, yeah, this is another one that's just, it's so endearing. So I kind of understand the beats of the Origami King because the Thousand Year Door is similar. It's like when you experience that world and just how it's put together, the aesthetic, the design, like you said, it's just awesome and incredible to look at and very unique. This one has simple but addictive combat where it's you're picking your move, and with Mario it might be as simple as jumping on your enemy's head, but there are these little additions like, oh, if you hit A at the exact moment you hit the enemy's head, you could chain together and get more attacks and like get bonuses for your attacks. It's a very self-aware Mario story where it's all tongue-in-cheek and they comment on like themselves as with a good understanding of who the characters are. It allows both major and minor characters to shine. Like you play as a Koopa Troopa, you play as a Goomba, and these characters have names and personalities, and it's just that sort of thing that no other Mario game really does. Like, what are Goombas in a Mario game? Just cannon fodder. But this makes them people and makes them hilarious too. Just breathes life into the Mushroom Kingdom that really wasn't there prior to this. I remember this being the first time I actually thought of some of those enemies as people, and it changed the way I looked at all the Mario games I had played before it, because am I the monster if I'm like going through this land killing all these creatures? Probably.
Well, and Mario doesn't really talk in these games at all, so he is less of a person than anyone, it feels
right.
like.
No, 100%. Yeah, that's accurate. This also has Rock Hawk, who is the wrestling hawk. And if you haven't played the game, you don't know how much you can appreciate Rock Hawk screaming Rock Hawk at the top of his lungs.
I've always heard that Thousand Year Door is like the best Paper Mario. I don't know how it stacks up to Origami King, but yeah, I've heard really good things about both of them.
I feel like it's my favorite, but I haven't played the Origami King. I also didn't play what was the Color Splash or something like that.
But that one I've heard bad things about.
I mean, I've heard they're all good if you like Paper Mario. I think this one might have a better reputation because it was kind of the first to do these bigger things. Not to say it did it better than these other games, but like it was the first one to really like get the characters involved and add that like design aesthetic and things like that. I mean, I know there was Paper Mario on the N64,
sure,
but I think this was just took it to that next level.
Yeah, I have not played the Thousand Year Door because it's going to be a trend with much of what I say. I just didn't have the consoles that it worked on, and so now I'm just playing the newer stuff. But I wish I had a console to go play that. But
well, Nintendo is made sure you have no way to play that.
Yeah.
Unless you have that.
Is like a bigger issue. Yeah. Like you have to go get a GameCube and get this game, which is not cheap to play.
Oh no. It's one of the rarer games for sure.
It's disappointing that you can't just download it on your current generation of Nintendo console, right? Yeah.
You can just download it, but not in the right way.
Not the right way.
All right. Well, my number 5, good pick. Both of those Paper Mario games, I've heard really good things. So one day I've missed both of them. I only played the first Paper Mario. But my number 5 is Pokemon Blue. This was the first Pokemon game that I played, and I've only played a handful of others. I think I played Pokemon Y and Pokemon Shield, and that's it. I know there's been like a dozen in between there. But this one, it was my first one. I was the exact right age to like experience it, I feel like. And it was like baby's first RPG, but I had played other RPGs before this, and I'll get to those as well. But it was it was fun. It was very easy, and it was a great Game Boy game. I think that's where it really shined. And obviously, Nintendo made money hand over fist with this franchise. But it made sense to be on the Game Boy. It was so much fun just catching Pokemon. Like that concept, we've seen it everywhere now, and we still see it with things like Pokemon Go and that all those iterations of that. And turns out people really like this gameplay mechanic, and they will go out into the real world and do everything you did in basically the original series. So everyone knows what Pokemon is at this point. I feel like it meant the most to me. I think just the time and place kind of mentality around it. And I've talked about it before, how the games are great, but things like the anime and the training cards and like everything surrounding Pokemon is just like, that makes it all one of my favorite franchises.
Especially when it was first starting out, it was a time and a place, you know, it was like, you'll never get to experience that again.
Right.
And it was good to be around at that time. Pokemon Yellow almost made my list, but it did not. No Pokemon game made my list.
Really? Okay.
Really.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, having played the oldest one and the newest one, yes, there have obviously been a lot of changes, but the same basic like premise is the same for all of these games. So I feel like you get that same feeling no matter which one you play. So
yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah. Like Animal Crossing, it's one of those series that like little additions, you know, not like drastic overhauls every iteration.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've played one, you've gotten the feeling that you need to, and you'll know if you like it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you ready for your number 4?
Yes. So my number 4 is Catherine Full Body. And
cool.
Yeah, this is a really interesting puzzle RPG game. And it drops down a spot in my list yesterday when I was replaying it, because playing it a second time through, I realized just how many cutscenes there are. And I was like, I want to say something. I want to make a decision. Like, give me something to do. But it's really, really fun. It's by Atlas. So it's the same studio that does the Persona games. And it's the story about this guy, Vincent, who has 3 Catherines in his life. So the original Catherine, there's only 2 Catherines, but with Full Body, there's 3 Catherines.
Oh,
and
wow.
Jeez.
Plot twist.
One is his girlfriend. One is this girl he finds on the street who has amnesia and starts playing piano in his bar. And one is this girl who he keeps waking up and she's in his bed. And he doesn't know how she got there, what they did, and he like doesn't want to be cheating on his girlfriend, but she just keeps being there and is freaking him out. And it's this world where there's this rumor going around that all of these men have been dying in their sleep, and they've been dying because they died in their dream.
Oh, wow.
And then he starts having these crazy dreams where he has to climb up a wall of blocks and get to the top without dying.
I've seen this.
It's so cool. So the gameplay is you're moving blocks around to try to climb up during the dreams every night. And some of the blocks have like spikes that come out of them. Some of them are immovable. And the layers of blocks are falling as you go. So you have to go faster than they're falling. It's really cool. And then during the evenings, you're at this bar that you frequent and you're talking to girlfriend Catherine over text.
Don't lose track of that, right?
You're talking to piano playing Catherine. So they call the one who plays the piano in the bar Rin. That's her short name. And then the other 2 are just Catherine. And then you make decisions throughout the night. Like, am I going to be nice to my girlfriend? She's trying to get me to marry her. Like, am I going to go along with this? Like, do I want to flirt with Catherine who's been in my bed? Or do I want to kind of like push her away and get out of this situation. And then there's this whole weird thing with Rin where like, I don't want to spoil it, but it's a little like not PC, I will say. They handle it very strangely, but then I have to remind myself this is a Japanese game. Right. So like some things come across differently. But I just really like the combination of like a puzzle game with an RPG because it's not something you see very often. And it's really tense. Like when you're talking about like butt clenching moments, like this whole game, you're trying to climb this tower and eventually monsters start showing up and climbing the tower behind you. And they're giant. Like they have a hand the size of the tower. And one time, the first night, is Catherine, who your girlfriend, and then you find out she might be pregnant. So the next night, it's like this demon baby who's climbing up behind you. And it's so scary. It's so cool.
Oh, man.
Now that I'm talking it through, I kind of want to bump it up a spot again. But I was just so mad last night about those cutscenes.
On last week's list, I said something as my number 5, and then I was like, actually, that'd be my number 2. So it happens, right? Sometimes you get talking about it and it's like, oh man, wait a minute, this is really good. That's a game
too long between them.
That's a game I've always wanted to play. So I do appreciate you not spoiling it. Typically we're pretty loose with that sort of thing for older games, and it is an older game, but it's one I just haven't got around to, but it does seem very, very intriguing. Pretty creepy though.
Are there multiple endings if you're making decisions all the time? Okay.
I think there's 6 endings. So there's like a good ending and a bad end, but it's not like good and bad. It's like good and evil because it's how you play your character. So whether you were evil during it or whether you were good for each of the girls. So for every Catherine, there's an ending.
Evil! Evil!
Grandpa, you said that about all the presents.
I just want attention.
I hope there's consequences, or like, sometimes these games give you these choices, but you can win everything. Like you could be nice to all 3 girls and come out on top. Does it do a thing where if you're nice to one girl, maybe you have fewer options to be nice to the other ones, or can you kind of just win with all 3, like come out on top?
So the first time I played through, I get really like anxious about playing against my ethics in games.
Right, same. I cannot do it.
Game.
Yeah, I
so
cannot
like
do
the
it.
first time I was really nice to Catherine, my girlfriend, and then flirty Catherine, I was like, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. And Rin, I was just like pleasantly nice as a friend. And so I got like a pretty standard ending. But this time I'm trying to be evil just to see what would happen because I had those questions too. And I don't actually know what the endings are other than the one I got. So
I have a hard time playing against my ethics as well. Like I always say in Skyrim, I'm going to be like the worst guy ever, but I can't do it. I can't do it.
Oh man. If some character asks me to kill like a basket of puppies, I don't have any problem doing it. That's usually what it is too.
Yeah.
Last night.
Who are we dealing with here?
When I was in the bar, I had the option to text Catherine, like, sleep well, Catherine, or bye. And I texted her bye, and I just felt my heart break.
Oh, no.
I was like, this is so horrible.
Right? Oh, God. What kind of nightmares am I going to have tonight? That's a good pick. Definitely well regarded. One that I really need to get around to. So my number 4, though, and this might be a long explanation because I feel like it's going to be the one that I have to defend the most out of everything on my list. This is a game I omitted from my what I've been playing this week, and it is Yakuza Like a Dragon. This is a 2020 release. Most people probably will not count it among their favorite JRPGs. However, it has made an extreme impression on me. All Yakuza games are very tongue-in-cheek with how ridiculous they get. This one just dives headfirst into it, though, whereas the other ones take themselves seriously, and it's more like a line here or a line there or a character here or a character there. This is just like the main character, Ichiban Kasuga, is like a caricature of a human being. His love for JRPGs influences everything he does and how he goes through life. He literally imagines the world as a JRPG, and it reminds me of that meme. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like, hey, life is basically an RPG, and most you guys leveled up the wrong stats. It is like in this game though, right? I know it's kind of a mean-spirited meme. It's not one I enjoy, but in this game, like his life is a JRPG and it's phenomenal. There's a part where he pulls a bat. So him and his little motley crew, right, are wandering and they see a bat stuck in a sidewalk, like a sword in a stone. And they go up and the first person in his party like tries to get it out and he can't. And the second person, who's like the strong guy, can't get it out. And then it goes to this cut scene where like Ichiban grabs it and like lightning comes out of his arms onto the bat. And but the funniest thing is, it's all taking place inside his head, right? And he like rips it out and the concrete cracks and like lightning surrounds him, almost like going Super Saiyan. And then he like puts the bat up in the air and like this beam of light shoots into the heavens from the baseball bat that he just pulled out of the side of the road. And it's so funny. So because of this, the enemies you face are human, but they transform. Every time you start a battle, they like transform into like almost subhuman version of themselves, and they all get these little names like the Dynan Dasher or the like Yakuza one. They all have very much more clever names than I could possibly come up with right now. There's a lot of side missions too. There's this thing called Sujimon, which plays like Pokemon, but it's Sujimon because you have to go out and gather information on super jittery men. So Sujimon, because you're going out and fighting degenerates, and like the more you fight them, the more you fill out your like Pokedex for all intents and purposes, where you learn their weaknesses. And everybody in the party knows how ridiculous Ichiban is, but they all play along with it because they know he really loves Dragon Quest. So they all like humor him. They're like, yeah, you're like the hero from these games. And like everybody's into it, which just is so great. So there's also this thing called Pound Mates, which are summons though. They're summons. They're Pound Mates. So it starts out where like you get a flyer and it's for like a bathhouse, right? And this guy's like, oh, I'm going to call up this bathhouse. But he ends up calling in like this huge dude who just like helps them out in a fight. And that's how you found out that Pound Mates is in fact just you summoning other people in, and you use your cell phone to like call them. And it's this, big animation when you do it. There's also a job system. So there is a lot of depth here, right? There's a job system that totally changes each character's moves and specials and appearances. So even the lead, Ichiban, you can, decide you're going to be like a bodyguard class, and all of a sudden your weapon changes and your attacks change, your specials change. It totally revamps everything. And there are multiple classes for each person in your party. So there's a lot of depth there as far as the combat goes. It is all turn-based. But that, that ridiculousness, it's just, there'll be like a conversation where an NPC starts talking and they'll say something like, it all started years ago. And the main character's reaction is like, oh, here we go again. Like it understands it's an RPG. And yeah, it gets hilariously melodramatic and then very serious at times, but never loses that humor. I'm just in love with this game. I couldn't play Forza. I found myself playing Forza this week and just wanting to go back to this. And I probably already put in like 12 to 15 hours at this point, and I will 100% see the rest of the story through, because in the background of all this is an actual compelling, like Yakuza Japanese underbelly story that is in fact very serious, despite how the game plays itself out. I'm in love with it. I love it.
Would you say that the humor is the real hook for you, or is it the gameplay?
The gameplay is great.
Okay.
The humor is what's keeping me in it, though, because I feel like I'm laughing out loud every few minutes. Right. And it's just fun. It's fun to play. It's fun for that humor. It's great, man. Like,
and you've played other Yakuza games. Yeah. Is this the best one you've played then?
I think this is my favorite Yakuza game. The other ones are kind of beat 'em up. But this is obviously turn-based RPG. And I think it's almost better for that. Like the gameplay of the other Yakuza games, it got tiresome when you ran into enemies. It's just like, okay, cool. Like I know I'm going to go in and do these beat 'em up moves and I'll run through them. But in this one, there's enough diversity there that it's always fresh. You could always change your job. You could always change up what you're doing, and it makes it that much more dynamic. The combat more dynamic. Yeah, that's it.
Another one I gotta play.
I mean, people probably wouldn't agree with me, but I know I went on like a little bit of a rant there, but I do feel like I have to justify why this is on the list. It is just as good as the games it draws its inspiration from. And it has all these 8-bit sound effects scattered throughout. Like when you find armor, it's this little like, chip tune, and yeah, everything it's just so good. It's like just pays homage to all the nostalgia for early RPGs in the best ways. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a thing where, I have old games on my list, and there have certainly been newer games that probably do that kind of stuff better. But yeah, it's a time and place sometimes for them. But it sounds like Yakuza is just hitting you right. And you don't really have anything to draw from, but it's just like, yeah, this is a good game that came out recently.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it did learn all those kind of lessons from games past.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me go on and on and on about it.
Yeah. No, it's an intriguing game by the sound of it, and it's on Game Pass, so I don't have to drop a dime.
No, you don't.
Sweet. All right. Well, getting to my number 4, this was a game I mentioned last week from the top 10 box art, and it is Golden Sun. And I think because I was just thinking about this game more and more, I really do like this game a lot as a JRPG. It was probably the game I spent the most time on my GBA, just like going back and thinking of all the hours I put on that thing. I played it way more than the sequel, which was equally good, but this one just holds a special place in my heart. I think that one of the best things about it is, you were mentioning summons in Yakuza. This game has some really cool summons where it's just like those really big monsters that it's like Final Fantasy, it just takes up the whole screen and is just pummeling whatever bad guys are in view. But it builds. So, you get like little summons at first. And then when you get all 7 things or whatever, you just get this massive thing that a 30-second cutscene just obliterates the field. And that was something that I was aware of in games. Like I think Final Fantasy VII was doing a lot of that. I just remember people doing that Knights of the Round
Knights
table.
of the Round,
all the time. Yep.
Yeah.
But this was my first, iteration where I saw that happening, and on that tiny GBA screen on 320 by whatever pixels. It was just still so cool seeing these huge monster summons and just decimating the battlefield. Going back and kind of looking at this game it's pretty horrendous. Like the battle view is not great. I mean, because of that low resolution, it's really hard to see what's going on. And it was a game that kind of everything was moving. When you're in that idle animation during a battle, things are still moving around, but it doesn't hold up in that respect. So it's a hard game to like recommend to someone nowadays, to go back to. But as a JRPG that I spent a lot of time with, like hands down, one of the top ones.
I had a feeling this would be on your list after last week. Yeah.
I haven't really talked about Golden Sun previous to that.
Right.
But yeah, that one.
There's been a few times it's come up. I know about your love for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do know that. I think you've just said it in passing in other lists, but this 2 weeks in a row, it's been on your list. That's great, man. And
I mean, it had the whole, kind of code thing where your choices from the first game carried over to the second game. It generated a code at the end of the first game that you would just input when you went to play the second game, and it would remember certain aspects of it, that was novel for 2001.
Yeah.
So it was
definitely
pretty cool at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Good pick.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Number 3. So my number 3 is Pokemon Sword.
All right.
And this actually isn't my first Pokemon game, but it was the first one I played at the time that everyone else was playing it. So I think that definitely added a different element to it. couple of years ago, I borrowed a Game Boy Advance. Those are the flippy ones, right? From a friend. And I played a good amount of Emerald, but I got stuck somewhere. And I don't know, something about not having other people who were playing it. Everyone was so far past it that it just didn't feel the same. And then the same thing happened with, I forgot what it's called, but the one that's on Alola.
Oh, yeah. Is that
Sun and Moon? Yeah, Sun and Moon. I like borrowed someone else's, but then finally, I actually had my own console. And I got the game right when it came out, and I was able to play through the whole thing on my own time, and it was an amazing experience. And like also working at the company I work at, because we're a manga company, we publish the Pokemon mangas in English. And
cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And so everybody in the office was playing it. And at lunch, we would all like sit together and bring out our Switches and play together. And it was an incredible experience. I love that game. The battling when you can I'm so bad at terms.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You make
Gigantamax,
your Pokemon,
I think.
Yes, Gigantamax, your Pokemon, and they're so big and the music gets so intense. And I feel like I finally felt like part of the gaming community in that moment for the first time. I was like, okay. Nice. I'm excited for a new release. I'm playing on a console I own. This is cool. Yeah. And it was just a really fun game overall.
So you got it day one? Pretty close to it.
I'm trying to remember. It was either day one or the weekend
right
after. But yeah, right away.
And like it's really cool that you bring up the social aspect of that. It's something that like was a huge part of my childhood growing up, was going to the playground and what do you do here? And it does add something, right? It's a lot better to have that amongst friends than on the screen in front of you, right? Like, how do I overcome this thing? You guys were the Switch commercial. All playing together. Like, that's great.
We were. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's phenomenal, man. Good pick too. Good pick for sure.
So how did you, just one quick thing, between Sword and Shield, how did you make that decision? Because I feel like a lot of people did Sword, and I feel like I always try to go to the one that I feel like people don't go towards. Like I did Y instead of X, and I did blue instead of red, but I don't know if I'm just making that up in my mind.
I honestly, this is the silliest thing, but I also just bought the remaster for Diamond and Pearl. And so the way I chose for Sword and Shield was because I thought the dog with the sword looked better than the dog with the shield. And the way I chose for Diamond and Pearl was because Shining Pearl sounds nicer to me than Brilliant Diamond. So very arbitrary, but
sure. I feel like that's a good way to do it. I chose Let's Go Eevee because like I've seen Pikachu, and it's also kind of which Pokemon you could get, right? That plays a little bit of a role in there. Yeah. But I could see the logic there, Brian. I do think most people would pick Sword over Shield and X over Y because it's just cooler. But the red.
So you want to be,
I don't know.
You want to be able to provide those Pokemon that might not be as readily available,
right? Through your little like plug cable or whatever it's called, right? With red and blue. So my number 3, and this is where I start to go off the rails, guys. This is where I'm going to catch a lot of crap because my number 3 is a Final Fantasy game. And my number 3 is the first Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy 1 for the NES. I had to put this game on my list. It meant everything to me growing up.
Is this your first JRPG, would you say?
Yes, this was my first JRPG. Okay. I remember playing The Legend of Zelda and being floored by that. The exploration in it, just the open world aspect of it. And then Final Fantasy 1 comes along, and it was like that first eye-opening moment that like, wait a minute, this is so much more epic than that first Legend of Zelda game. And it was the first thing I had really played since that initial Zelda game that was more than it. Man, it was an epic story in scale. Looking back by today's standards, it's almost a barely there story, but there's just so much world building and how the world opens up to you in steps, I thought was so cool. It never seems overwhelming. You start out and you're on the smaller landmass, and these minor enemies give you trouble. But if you take your time and you level up, you can eventually overcome the first like mini boss. And then after that, you can then go over a bridge. And when you go over the bridge, there's a bigger continent available to you. And when you're able to defeat kind of another mini boss in a town, then you get a pirate ship and the seas open up to you. And then there's like all these little steps you have to do to open up the entire world till eventually you get an airship and it's like game on. But it was just everything about it. I couldn't believe the systems that were in play. I hadn't experienced anything like that before. And I mean, I say this as an adult. As a kid, it was just like, wait, you could do all these things in a game? I never ran, which in hindsight, I probably should have. No. It was always there as an option, but like I had a sense of pride when I was younger that like I could do this. And that left me going into a lot of caves and not leaving intact, having to do it all over again. But it was also one of those games that I had friends playing at the time, and I remember them saying, it's the playground stuff. Are you here yet? Are you here yet? Have you faced this enemy yet? Have you come across this like weapon yet? And I remember specifically one person saying he made up a villain in the game and said, I ran into him in this patch of woods, like right off this town, and blah blah blah. And I swear it's like where he told me he got him. I had the kid come over to my house after a while because I'm like, this patch of woods, right? Because it's like that big. And I had my little character walking all through there for hours trying to find this enemy who he swore up and down he found. I forget what he said the enemy's name was, but he was full of it. There's no such thing. But
I just wanted you to get into random battles for hours on end.
Right. Exactly. And I loved how the game made sense. The things that were weak to fire, it would be apparent they are weak to fire if they're ice creatures, right? And vice versa. That elemental aspect, really, I don't remember it being a part of a game prior to this. And it never stops challenging you, especially once you get towards the end game. There are these 4 creatures you have to face that are the big bosses of the game. And even the area surrounding their fortresses are just very, very challenging. The final boss and what you have to go through to get to that boss it is one of the toughest things that I had done in gaming for years beyond playing this. And it just left such an impression on me. And it really was the first moment where I saw what video games could do. And I think it's one of the reasons I fell in love with video gaming. So it had to be on my list. Had to be here.
I feel like, if that was your first RPG, just seeing what a game could be, that is one of those defining moments where you're like, oh, it's not just a side scroller where you're jumping up and down. It can be this whole story and worlds that you're exploring and talking to people and making decisions and buying stuff. Like, that's a whole new experience that, it's pretty amazing to come across that for sure.
Yeah. Love it.
I love it.
I'll still play it. I could still play that game. Like I would play it right now.
So that's one I think I watched my brother play a lot of. It wasn't one that I like ever jumped into. He was the RPG guy when it was NES and Super Nintendo is when I started getting into it. But it was always fun to see him going through those worlds. It's not on my list, but there's a game, and I can't remember what the game was. I think it was like Lufia, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's a game.
Yes. There was this like 99 dungeon, like 99 floor dungeon where you couldn't turn off the system and you couldn't save. So he would like go through this dungeon and be at like level 40. And if you died, you went back. If you turned off the system, you went back. So he would just leave it on overnight. And there were many, many times where like I wanted to like get up in the morning and play, and that little red light was on, so I couldn't touch it.
Man.
And there were definitely times where we either like lost power or mom just like unplugged it to plug in the vacuum or something. And those were catastrophes for sure.
Did you ever like turn it off and put your
Absolutely,
game in and
I
say,
do.
I don't know what happened. We must
No,
have had.
I would do it just like I'm playing now, and those were not good moments either. But
I'm sure.
yeah. But yeah, getting to my number 3. It is not Lufia 2 because that was not one that I played. But it is Valkyria Chronicles. So I know I've mentioned this one on the podcast before.
I need to play it.
I've heard about this one. Yeah.
It's good. I mean, so there are, I think, 4 of these games at this point. It's been a weird trajectory for like PS3, then PSP, and then it finally hit Nintendo systems. I know with the latest iteration. This is the only one that I have played. But the gameplay was just something that I had never seen before, where it is kind of I don't know what you want to call it, but it's basically World War II, but it's made up with different names like Europa, and there's all sorts of different factions that aren't obviously what the real life counterpart was. But you're just playing as this guy who is in the army, and everyone gets a tank, and it's just a battlefield, and you're basically moving different types of units. So there will be like scouts and lancers with these big like rocket shooting things, and engineers and medics. So you have all these different classes, and you have to maneuver around the battlefield. And when you actually move them, you are going from the top down to a third person, and then you move and you get a certain meter that goes down as you're making your decision where to go. But it's real time when you are moving around, and then you finally get the chance to attack, and you have to line up your shots as if you're playing like an action game. So you line things up, and then you get percentages for basically if you're going to hit them or not. And then that just plays out, and you have, you can repair like your tank if you need to with the engineers, or get your downed comrades with medics, and everyone has different levels of attack and movement and vision, but there's just so many different elements to it that go into it. And it was a strange game to like bring in those real-time plus turn-based elements. So pretty remarkable set of systems. And then you had, some talkie points where it was like, okay, well, we're back at base, and, what happened here? Like, let's do this better. And hey, let's do this alliance so that we can do this powerful move if we're like right next to each other on the battlefield. So there's all sorts of things that you have to choose. And then it was another game where it's like, that person's dead. They are no longer in the game anymore.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're okay with getting a new recruit, basically. So it was a lot of cool elements to it, basically.
Yeah. Sounds very dynamic.
It is very Japanese, very anime, which, it was a little bit of a turnoff for me, but like I pushed past that and really liked the characters after a certain point. And whenever a game has some sort of storybook, like here's the book and we're going into chapter 1.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then like flipping the page, and then like here's a picture, but now we're like zooming into it, and it's all playing out with it was kind of like watercolory. I mean, you can look up pictures of it, and the graphics are amazing. And it didn't matter that it was like on a PS3. It like looked gorgeous there. I know the PS3, like it's weird to say as not a powerful system nowadays, but yeah.
Yeah,
it looks good. Like it stood the test of time. I could look at that game now and enjoy the graphics, no problem.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good pick.
That's awesome.
Valkyria Chronicles.
All right.
Okay, number 2. This game is very special to me. Ni no Kuni.
Oh, yes.
And it is an incredible game. And speaking of that game that made you realize what games could be and like helped you become a gamer and understand gaming, this is that game for me. I played it 4 or 5 years ago, so that kind of gives some insight into my journey. And I played it all on my friend's PS4. And luckily he was like my best friend in Minneapolis, so I would just go crash there and I would play till like 2 a.m. And I worked at a comic book store at this time, and so I just like play until 3 o'clock in the like 3 p.m. in the afternoon the next day, and then go to the comic book store and come back and play all night again. And this game, It's like it's hard to describe because when you look at it, it kind of looks like it's more like geared towards kids, which it can be, and it is a very all ages friendly game, but all ages in the sense that it's a really good game, and so everyone really can enjoy it. And it's the story of a boy who his mom recently passed away. He's really lonely. And then this goofy little fairy dude shows up in his bedroom and says, "Hey, I need you to help me save my kingdom." And he says, "No." And the fairy's like, "Wait, what? Like, why?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about your kingdom. Like, what do you want me to do?" And eventually he convinces him to go over. And it turns out he's like this prophesied kid who's the pure-hearted one. And so you're going through the kingdom. It's a very classic thing where you have different villages that you visit along the way. So there's like one that looks like a desert village, one that looks like a forest village. There's a fairy island. And throughout the game, you can go back to our world as well. And you have to change the hearts of characters that you meet in the game who have a doppelganger in the real world. So you'll like meet a person who looks like your next door neighbor. And then you have to go back to the real world, figure out why your next door neighbor is in a terrible mood, is grumpy all the time, figure out what it is they need in their life, fix them, and then come back. And then the character that you were stuck fighting with in the game, then you can move past them. And it's just incredibly heartwarming the entire way through. Like, I'm pretty sure I cried at the end. It's so good. The battling system, the combat is, it's not turn-based. It's kind of a free-for-all, which is not my favorite, but it was playable enough that I still enjoyed it a lot. And then the story and the characters you meet is so good. And I distinctly remember, this is the first game I have ever played all the way through and I've ever beaten. So I remember the night I beat it. I was at my friend's apartment and we were having a Magic the Gathering night because we're all nerds. And like we were in between, I had died very early. So I was playing while I waited for them all to finish because we were doing a draft. And I was about to beat the final boss. And everyone decided they wanted to go get food. So they started like shuffling around and standing in front of the TV. And I just yelled. I was like, "Hey, sit down." And I made them sit down. And then I beat the final boss. And it was the greatest moment of my life.
Nice.
That's awesome. And this is one that would definitely hold up too because of the art style. Like I feel like this could be a game you play years and years from now and still can enjoy. It's Studio Ghibli, is that right?
Yeah, so it was art directed by a Studio Ghibli director. So they kind of partnered up with it. It's not like officially Studio Ghibli, but yeah, there was a partnership there. Very cool. Ni no Kuni 2 is terrible. It was a huge disappointment.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Apparently there's another one that released in Japan that's really good that came out before. So Ni no Kuni, I think it's called Ni no Kuni the White Witch. And there was one before that called like the Dark Djinn or something like that. But I don't think it's released here.
Oh, bummer.
And then Ni no Kuni 2 here is the Revenant Kingdom, which was either 3 or 4 in Japan.
And that's
not
the
a good
one.
game.
That's the one that's not that great.
Yeah.
This is another one that I've always wanted to play. Even from the day it came out, I remember thinking I wanted to play it. And it's a good game if you're missing sleep over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one that my roommate played a lot of, and I watched him do it. And yeah, it was fun to watch. I don't know that it was like my style as far as I think I remember distinctly the story elements that you're talking about at the beginning with the little fairy and liking the like humor style of it. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely more. You were saying you like the action with some story. I like the story with some action. So it's definitely on that end of things.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say about Yakuza. It's like lots of story. Like, you get a lot of exposition in that game, but it's great. It's all good. Yeah. Anyway, enough about Yakuza. Am I right? I just won't shut up about it. Speaking of Yakuza, my number 2 is not related to Yakuza at all.
I was going to say, is it Yakuza 2 or something?
Yeah, no. It is Final Fantasy 6. I did not want to put 2 games from the same franchise on here. I did debate putting Pokemon Yellow on the list instead, but this is another one that I could not leave off my list. I'm sure everybody knows about Final Fantasy VI. It was Final Fantasy III here in the States for the SNES. This is one that I thought Final Fantasy I was eye-opening, and it was for the time, but this just takes everything and turns it up to 1,000. Like, it just blows the doors off that world building, off that story, off of everything. I mean, I remember being like floored by the emotional weight of this game. There's a point, I mean, spoilers for Final Fantasy VI, but I played it blind, like not knowing what to expect. And there's a point in the game where you think you're at the end of the game and you think you're about to beat it, and you don't. It like things get worse. You actually fail, and the world is worse off than it was before. And that was just like, I never experienced something like that in a game before. Then also Ultros was this character that keeps popping up throughout the game, who's kind of like this comic relief. He's an octopus, and he has really corny jokes, and he is gold. But just the party members as well, though it did things, you talk about story in games, and this is one where, yeah, the combat's there, and yes, you do have to grind an extensive amount in this game, but the story was the best part. There's like an opera scene where you choose what lines they sing, just all these things that like a lot of RPGs do now. It's beyond the dialogue, right? You get these other choices about actions or things to do, or like Catherine, right, about how you're going to act. But this was the first game that really, for me anyway, brought that into the limelight. That there were characters, and you're playing as all these people, and they're all individuals, and they all have their own personality, and they're all written as though they are their individuals. Looking back, by today's standards, a few of them are shallow characters, but at the time they felt unique and unlike anybody else in the game. And you could play through the game without getting all of them too. There's a ton of party members that you discover, and you have to go explore the world to find them. If you don't explore the world, they will not join your party. They won't be a part of it. And I thought just that kind of dynamism, as far as you can make it through the game and miss a good bit of the game, that was something that just, blew my mind at the time. I would talk to my friends who were playing it, and they had characters in their party that I hadn't even like known about. And where'd you get that guy? Like, how do I get him? And vice versa. And I don't want to go too much into all the story beats and the villain, who I still think is maybe not the best motivation for being a villain, but just was really cool at the time, and very unique villain. But now looking back, it's just like he's evil because he wants to be evil, which like isn't always the best motivation, right? It's the ones you could kind of sympathize with that tend to be the best villains. But yeah, no, Final Fantasy VI it blew my mind just as much as the first game did, and I had to put it on my list. It's another one I could not leave off of this.
That's a big one, definitely. It's one that I need to go back to with like fresh eyes, because it's been a long time. I never beat it. I just played a good chunk of it, but
I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack. I know a lot of people say 7 and 9, 4. That's all by today's standards. Those are the ones that hold up. Mm-hmm. This is the one that made the impression on me more than those did. So it's the one that I had to include. I think
you have more company with you than you realize on that. I think a lot of people like 6 a lot.
Oh, cool. No. I'm glad to hear it.
An important aspect of it too, like the impression it left has such an important, especially with video. You put so much of your time into these games, right? Like of course they're going to leave an impression on you.
Yeah. If there was a such thing as a time to value ratio, this game made the most of it at that time. Like it was just, you could just keep playing forever.
Right.
Yeah.
It was great.
It's awesome. All right. Well, we're getting to the ones here. So my number 2, Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo.
Nice. Good pick.
Predates or I would say it's the predecessor to the Paper Mario series.
Yeah.
This was the series that I loved. We got our Mario and Luigi games on the handhelds. We got our Paper Mario. I think I was one of those people who was looking for Super Mario RPG 2, things in the same universe, the same vein. And I think we ended up in a good place with those other franchises. Obviously, they were successful, and I've enjoyed, a couple of them in each of those variations. But Super Mario RPG for me means a lot. The graphics are very interesting. It was very much of its time with those 90s kind of computer generated graphics that they used similar things in like Donkey Kong Country.
Right.
Very low polygon count art from, like the key art that they used in like the instruction manual and things like that. It looks very simplistic by today's standards, but it is very much its own style. And I think that's really cool. And the humor definitely shines through in this game. Characters are always just ragging on Mario. I just love how Mario, again, doesn't talk at all, but he has different ways of like expressing things to characters where he'll just like pantomime different things and get all flustered. And it really kind of made Mario more than just, a plumber jumping on Goombas. And it gave him a world to actually like interact with people. And you talk about characters and party members. These are party members that people have been dying to see again.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Gino for Smash. Every single time there's a new Smash character about to be revealed.
Yeah.
And you get to team up with Bowser. So kind of like Julia was mentioning, those are always great moments when Bowser is kind of on your team. And that was the first time I had ever kind of seen that. He can join your party. He's a big brute. He does a lot of damage. My brother taught me how to do a good party composition with this game.
Nice. Because
I would always do like, okay, you gotta have Mario. I think you have to have Mario. And then I just went like full damage. Like, let's get Bowser in there. Let's get Gino. Let's get everyone who can do everything. And then he was like, no, you got to put Princess Toadstool in there. She's like your healer. You have to balance these things. Right. And that was a game changer for me. It was something that I just didn't understand, having a balance like that. And yeah, you just group hug and give kisses and everyone's happy. But yeah, I think the humor style was kind of like with what I was imagining with Yakuza. It really is something that pulls you through. This game has so many fun enemies and fun villains, like bosses, basically. And it's a long game. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and you always feel like, okay, well, this is the last boss. So like, it's got to be, but it keeps going. And I brought this up in our secrets episode. I know there's a ton of fun secrets, and one very bad secret that if you miss in the very beginning of the game, you can never go back to it. And I hate those kind of things, but yeah, this game really meant a lot to me. It was seeing Mario in a completely new genre, which they nailed the first time through. So.
When I was singing the praises of Thousand Year Door, I knew Brian had this ace in the hole. I knew it. I was like, everything I say about this game, Brian's going to pull out Super Mario RPG. But
we had that active battle. I think this was the first game to do that for the Mario stuff, where if you time it just right, if you hit A right when he's jumping on a Goomba, you get some extra damage and a little jingle plays.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good pick, man. Good pick.
Thank you. Passionate about that one.
Yeah.
We should get into our top games here, the number ones, and we will do that now.
All right. I feel like I need like a trumpet fanfare for this one because this is my favorite game
Lucky
of all
for
time.
you.
Oh, it's your favorite of all time.
Yes.
Wow. Well, we do have a bumper that goes in there, so you will have a little bit of fanfare that I'm now detracting from. The more time I eat up, the longer it is between the fanfare and your
favorite game of all time, Persona 5. I know I already mentioned it before, but man, this game, I feel like I've been chasing the high of Persona 5 since I first played a couple minutes of it when I first started. This is the game that got me to finally buy my own PS4. I actually had to restart this game 3 times because I was playing it on my friend from Minneapolis's PS4. I had gotten to the 4th palace, which, if you haven't played it, it takes a very long time to get to each palace. So
I've heard.
I think I'd sunk about 60 hours into it at this point.
Wow.
And then I moved to New York. And then I was dating a guy there who had it, and I started playing on his PS4, and we broke up. And then I finally got my own PS4. I finally got to play it all the way through. Oh my God, it's so good. I did not know that games could be so engaging. I did not know. It's a perfect balance of story and combat. So it's one where I never get tired of the combat, but it also has enough story to keep me engaged and keep me going. I don't even know where to start because I just love it so much. It's, the story of this kid who gets expelled from his old school because he attacks a man in the street. What he's actually doing is saving a woman who is being attacked by this guy, and so he punches the guy to get him away from the woman, and then the guy gets him in trouble and he's on probation. So he goes to live with his uncle in Shibuya, and then he goes to school in Shibuya, and during the day you're at school and you make relationships with people. You can go get a part-time job, you go to class, you do all of this stuff throughout your day, and everything that you do bumps up different points for different skill traits. So you have knowledge, you have charm, you have kindness, strength, and something I've forgotten. And so you're building them up, and then you find out that there's this other world, and that in this other world, people can build palaces with their mind, and it reflects their deepest, ugliest desire. And so you have to go into these palaces and fight the people and change their heart. So it's similar to Ni no Kuni, where you're purifying the heart, but here you're changing their heart. You're making them have a change of heart, and their palace will disintegrate once their heart is changed. And it's, oh my gosh, it's so cool. And then you team up with your different classmates. So you start out with your one friend, Ryuji, and he sees you go into the palace one day, and he accidentally stumbles in after you. And so he becomes a part of the team, and then On gets captured by the guy who, the first palace, who's the head of the first palace. And so she becomes a part of your team, and it builds out from there. Eventually you have a 10-person team, but you can only take 3 into battle with you. So you get to decide how you want to utilize people. You can switch them out during battle. It's turn-based, so I find that very enjoyable. And you get personas along the way, it's kind of like Pokemon, where you get these different spirits that have different powers, and the villains that you meet along the way are actually personas. And so if you defeat them, you can choose to bring them onto your persona roster. And then they'll have different weaknesses. And so you want to have a bunch of different powers in your roster to fight the weaknesses. And it's just beautifully animated. It's so well animated. All of the menus and everything are this jagged kind of musical punky style. And it's really fun.
Yeah, I've heard it's a very cool world to be in.
Mm-hmm.
About how long? Hundreds of hours, I've heard.
Yeah, I think I managed to beat it in 120 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. It might have been 150. I don't remember.
That's awesome. That's a lot of game.
Have you played other Persona games before? This
Nope.
was the one.
I never had the console, so I desperately want to play Persona 4 and Persona 3, but I don't have any way of playing them right now, so.
Yeah, and time, right?
Well, I have the time.
Oh, nice.
I'm actually playing Persona Royale right now. Royal, yeah.
Right.
Update,
No,
yeah.
I've heard. Yeah, that's great. Really towing that company line with the Persona love. I guess. I'm kidding.
It's so good.
So I have a question. When you level up, do the characters not in combat level up too, or is it also the balancing game where you have to pick and choose? If there's a character you leave to the wayside time and time again, will that character just be under leveled for the remainder of the game?
They do level up. You can give them items for them to level up faster.
Oh, nice.
too.
Nice.
On the outside, it's kind of a rare item, so there's not very many of them, but you can. I
That's
also
good.
found that like I really only needed about 6 of them. And so
Right.
like I would really only focus those and switch out. Like I had 2 healers I would switch out because like your magic runs out pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And so I'd switch those 2 out. And otherwise, you didn't really need the rest of them.
Right,
Like
right.
there's your heavy hitters. And then also your interactions with them in the school day will influence how well they do in battle as well. And you get to choose how you spend your time. So like there's this one guy who I never hang out with him. I just really don't like him. So I just ignore his texts.
Yeah.
I just don't hang out with him. And it doesn't affect my overall game because he can be a really strong player, but I just like in the way I play, I don't really need him.
He's
so.
not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. It does sound like a good game.
That's the most interesting thing about these games to me. It just seems so complex. You're mentioning talking to them, in the daytime at school stuff, and then influencing all those traits to then go into battle. I always feel like I'm not like, I don't know, min-maxing everything to the fullest potential in those situations. That happened for the Fire Emblem game for Switch. I forget what it was called. But it was just like 3 houses, right? So the more you talk to people, the better things would get, and you could like take them to tea time, and that would make things even better. So you like fostering these relationships to then be better in battle. It feels so difficult and like so hard to wrap my mind around. But like that seems like one of the big draws around things like Persona and just seeing these characters flourish, basically.
Yeah, it's really hard. You'll get like a text from 3 different people, and you have to decide who you want to answer, who you want to go hang out with, or maybe you ignore them all and go work to up a different skill. So
Yeah.
it's difficult, but worth it.
I can't even handle social interactions in real life. I don't know. It'd be tough for me. But it's a good game. I mean, like, I think a lot of people would agree with you that it being the number 1 JRPG.
Yeah.
I definitely think so.
Oh, and then I found out that we were publishing the manga like 2 weeks into working at my job, and I was over the moon. I was so excited. I was like, I cannot believe I just got my dream job.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
Publishing this manga.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool. Great pick. I'll do my number 1 real quick. It's what many people, I mean, it is a JRPG. Okay, guys, like, just to be clear, it's Dark Souls. It's a JRPG. It is a JRPG.
Okay.
Well, how is it not a JRPG?
No, that's fine. It is. It is.
It is.
is.
Definitely is.
Oh,
It is the hardest
floating
teacher.
there.
The hardest teacher with the greatest rewards. That's what this game is in a nutshell. It tells you nothing. It rewards you greatly for figuring those things out, though. I love it. Just figuring out where to go is part of the game, and it's just so the way that everything is designed is just so cool, because you end up going. You basically just decide where you can go by whether or not you survive. So I can go this way. Nope, I'm dead. I can go this way. Nope, I'm dead. I can go this way. Well, I'm not dead right away. I think I could take these enemies if I'm a little bit better at it. So that's the way you're going to go. And eventually you just keep going that way, and you keep following this thread. And before you know it, you unlock a gate, and it's like, wait a minute. How did I end up back where I was before? It does this wonderful thing about creating shortcuts by looping back to where you had originated from. And the characters in this game praise the sun. Like, they are the best. You got the Onion Knight. It's just such an endearing game. And it is, I think it teaches you hope in the darkest of times. Even the characters that have hope, some of them lose it, but you end up saving the world or damning the world by the end of it. Spoiler alert, but I'm sure you had already known that. It's really just, to me, it's about the combat. It's about the systems in play. It is definitely an action game. So the RPG is very loose here, but there are stats and there are classes and there are hit points. So to me, it's an RPG, but it's the one I had the best time with, also the greatest struggle with. And I think it taught me to have patience in video games as a whole, and that is transferred to other games and allowed me to be successful in many other games that I would have just put down due to difficulty. But this was the first time I was taught that lesson, and I loved it. I love everything about it. I would play it right now, and hopefully if I win our predictions, Brian and I will both be playing it. But we'll see. I think right now Brian's still in the lead.
I think that's why I just have to have pushback to it, because it feels like if you win, like it's your winning thing is for me to play it. So it has to be like a thing that I don't want to do, basically. You know what I mean?
You do want to play this, right?
But I do want to play it. Like I don't have any, my only experience is Bloodborne. So I've played this style before, but yeah, that's where my,
I haven't even, I talked about like the world design. I haven't even talked about like the character design and the beauty. Like it is a dark world, but there's so much detail and so much beauty in that world. And even the character design are just, it's easy to think, oh, medieval fantasy, like I'll just go run of the mill medieval fantasy. But like, no, there's lore to everything in this world. And the designs are unique for almost everything that you come across. And I mean, it's just, it's an awesome game and a wonderful, wonderful experience if you'll allow yourself to be punished for quite some time, because it is hard. It is difficult. But yeah, Dark Souls, man, my number one JRPG. I apologize to all the listeners out there.
It's funny that that's your pick, because I watched a little bit of that Elden Ring gameplay today. I didn't realize now how much I'm excited for that game.
It looks great.
Looks great. For whatever reason, I think I just grouped it as like, okay, another Dark Souls style game that's coming out. But that one looks...
They're taking it to another level. Cool. Yeah, they really are. It looks like if Dark Souls met Breath of the Wild in some ways. That's a very simple comparison, but
it's the easiest way to get me excited. Like that was my first thought, just running around that world. It seems like Breath of the Wild with kind of the good graphics of today. I mean, Breath of the Wild looks beautiful, but it's its own art style.
Yeah.
That had me excited.
There's that part where he like calls the horse, he summons the horse. It's not really a horse, but you know what I mean. And he's like riding around on it, and then a dragon, a dragon comes out of the sky and just like lands in front of him. And it's oh man, yes, Elden Ring, can't wait for sure. Yeah. All right.
Sorry to derail us a little there, but I had to bring that up because that was my first look at that game, and it can't come. Man, February, and is it March or is it February that game's coming out?
I thought it was late February.
Okay,
another
February. It's release. Horizon is gonna definitely, that's the game for me on that month. No, can't dethrone Horizon for me.
For me, it's going to be Advance Wars. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, jeez.
I'm kidding.
All right. Well, let's get to my number one to wrap this up. I know that Ryan already knows the answer to this question.
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, I would love.
It's Chrono Trigger.
It is Chrono Trigger. Yeah. It's got to be Chrono Trigger.
That's why it's not on my list.
Yeah. Because I always forget like that. Yes, you have played this and loved this game as well. But this was the game for me that continues. Like, this is the one that I play every couple of years. I get all the different endings as many times as I want, which I think that's another big hallmark of JRPGs, is having these multiple endings and your choices really mattering for different iterations. There's like 16 different endings to this game. And I know that's probably pretty small for some games nowadays. What is that one game that has like 26 endings, one for every letter of the alphabet? Nier, isn't it? Nier Automata?
Does it?
I think
did
so.
Not know that.
Pretty sure. Yeah. But Chrono Trigger, kind of like you were talking with Final Fantasy. You're in a little town and you walk over a bridge, and then you get another vehicle. This one, you get an airship, but then it can travel back and forth in time.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So you're going to different epochs, different eras of time. You're going to the future. You're going to the past. You're going to the way past in prehistoric times. And you just get to see this map, this continent, and then it changes over time depending on where you are in time. And we've got awesome characters. Spoiler alert, you can die. Your main character can die. And that is an ending of the game where you are just, all right, well, we'll just choose 3 other party members and we can beat this game. Or you can go back and try to save your main character. You can go to the final boss at the very beginning of this game and try to beat the final boss. There's just so many different things that I think the choices mattering and pinpointing where you need to be in time to get these different tasks done is just an incredible experience. It is an active time battle, so I know how you said it's my turn, I want to attack. This varies it a little bit where it's still turn-based, but everyone has a gauge that you can theoretically go again or like faster than other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, the art style, I think it's the same person or the same people that do Dragon Ball Z. So it's that kind of art style, which again, it's not my forte per se, but because this has been in my life since '95, it's a big part of like what I deem as a good looking game and a good looking art style. It had an effect on me. But yeah, I think just all the different iterations that you can go through, it's just a phenomenal story. And I'm not always the one to say like story is paramount to all, but this one makes it really does make a difference to me that the story is so strong.
Yeah.
And the music. I mean, I could go on it's hour-long tirade about the music.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very like especially for the time, the way the whole experience is put together is pretty incredible. I mean, you're dealing with different times, and
right.
Yeah, there's a lot that comes along with that, especially when changes are made in the past.
Exactly.
But they did it. Like they did a good job with it. And the ATB was in 6, so it's not a deal breaker for me.
Sure. Okay.
yeah. But I do tend to flock towards turn-based. Yeah.
Sure.
Great pick though, man. Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I don't want to blow a list for the future, but this is unabashedly my favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I know
incredible.
I've said that to people in my life, so
right.
I don't feel like I'm ruining a like top 10 of all time list. That this is the one.
And the way we have lists stacked up right now, it's going to be a while before we get to our top
exactly
10 games.
That'll be the final show, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't get there anytime soon.
Exactly.
I like you, Brian. I like you.
Yeah.
I like you too,
we'll
Julia.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on. I did have a few questions before we wrap up here, just basic ones. You work currently in manga publishing. Do you have a favorite manga?
Oh, this is such a hard question because I have so many.
You can name a few. Name a few.
I think right now, Kaiju number 8 is one of my tops. And this we haven't published yet, but it's out like on our Shonen Jump app and it's out in Japan. And it's about a guy who he has a job of cleaning up the corpses of kaiju after the kaiju defenders just like kill them and get rid of them.
That's
and it's
cool.
a world where like kaiju are normal. And so he has to go and clean up the bodies. And he really wants to be the one who's killing the kaiju. But then one day he turns into a kaiju himself and he's like, oh, well, I guess I can't kill kaiju if I am a kaiju. So It's really funny and crazy. It's a lot of fun. I also really like Saint Young Men, which is not my company, but it's a great manga about Jesus and Buddha. They decide to take a year off and live in a little apartment in Japan. And it is so funny. It's so ridiculous, but it's like, Ryan, you might know this, but my dad's a Catholic deacon. Right. And I actually gave this manga to him for Christmas because it's so respectful while also being absolutely hilarious and so well written. And usually manga have translation notes at the end of a volume, but this one has translation notes at the end of each chapter to explain some of the concepts of Buddhism and Catholicism. And it's just really cool.
Yeah. I do know your dad's a deacon. You know, your dad married me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot about that.
I like wording it that way.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are my tops right now. I honestly read so much manga that it's hard to pick top ones, but
yeah. Do you have a top anime?
Yes, I think I would say Psychopaths, but only the first season.
Okay.
That one was really fun. The second season goes off the rails a little too much for my taste, but the first season's really, really good.
I would also ask what your favorite game is, but I think that came up. Do you have any that weren't on your list that you'd like to mention that made quite an impact on you?
Yeah. Until Dawn is a really, really fun game. And I think that one, I did it thank you. We did it in a way where me and my two roommates would take turns making the decisions or like have a vote between us, and it was incredibly fun. And I'm replaying it by myself right now, but sometimes I get too scared, and so I can only play in little bursts. But that one is I think it was the first time I saw a game where they looked like real people. Like they were based off of actor models, you know?
And they look like Rami Malek, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Right?
And what is her name? Hayden Panettiere.
We just talked about this game a few weeks ago, actually. Peter Stormare. Yeah.
It's such a good game. And then I'm like I said, I'm still chasing the high of Persona 5. I've been playing through all the Mario games that I can on my current consoles, and I really liked Mario Odyssey. That was
very cool. Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome game.
Did you have a chance to play? Have you heard about our Lord and Savior Mario Sunshine?
I started playing it and I hated it.
Yes. Excellent.
Oh no, I'm
very
crying.
good.
I'm crying. Julia.
I went through a portal and ended up like many levels in that I didn't think I was supposed to be
at. And the camera was just like jittering everywhere.
Guys, okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have heard of it.
Yeah.
And I know you currently work in manga publishing, but you used to work in comic book publishing. Do you have a favorite comic book?
Oh boy. Okay. I think probably okay, I'll give you what I'm reading right now.
Yeah, that's good. What are you reading right now?
Because too much. There's one called The Nice House on the Lake, and it's by James Tynion, and it's like a apocalyptic horror. It's really cool.
Very cool. I like. So we've talked about comic books a lot in the past. It was a common thread. And I love Marvel. Nothing has changed on that front. I actually had a listener suggest, a friend suggest reading the Annihilation War from the early 2000s, especially after playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game, because it is kind of that cosmic, galactic scope of the Marvel universe. And I'm currently on book 2, and it's really, really good. Really enjoying that. And I've always told my listeners, get a local library card and download the Hoopla app if your library participates, because you can get comic books for free, like an endless supply of comic books.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
For Hoopla, are there holds? Like if there are too many digital copies out, do you have to kind of get in line? Yeah,
you can put a hold on it. So it will, if someone has the book and doesn't return it, if there is not someone waiting, it will auto renew for that person. So you may be the only person who would be waiting. So definitely put a hold on it, because then it will cease that auto renew and go to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So Hoopla, guys, read a book. Or a manga.
Yeah, we're not on Hoopla yet because I can't do the right to left reading
format
yet, but we are on Overdrive, which is very similar to Hoopla. So
same thing. There's like Libby, Overdrive, Hoopla. They're all good. For sure. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It was a blast. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, I had so much fun. And now I have new games to check out too. So
Yeah, I feel like I do too. I feel like I really need. At the very least, I got to finally get around to playing Catherine with a C, and then there's Catherine with a K. But there's also Rin.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have anything else you want to say? Anything you want to shout out while you're here, or just like?
I saw you were reading The Creative Gene the other day, which is a book we published. So read that book.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Actually, I talked about it last episode, and I absolutely love it. Hideo Kojima is a great video game producer. And yeah, man, it's a good book. It's really interesting.
If you haven't read Ask Awada yet,
oh my
that
gosh,
one is also really good too.
That's my next one. I am so glad you said that, because I was going to be the next book I brought to the table. But on the note of publishing The Creative Gene, it is gorgeous. Like the hardcover on it. No, seriously, it's like simple in design, but I absolutely love the cover of that book. Yeah,
nice.
It's really
good. I cannot take any credit for that, but our design team is absolutely incredible. They do such a good job.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's incredible.
I want to plug one more book because there's another one coming out. Reggie Fils-Aimé is doing a book in May, Disrupting the Game from the Bronx to the Top of Nintendo. So I'm looking forward to that one. That sounds like it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, we are living in a golden age for gaming books. Really, a golden age, Brian.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and really like Jason Schreier's books, there's so much out there that really offers a lot of insight into the video game world that wasn't there before. I mean, it's a side that as a game player, you don't typically get to see. And it's really cool. I love that these books are coming out.
Yeah. We should have the authors on the show sometime. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
We'll shoot our shot. We'll see what they say. Yeah. So you work at the publisher. So if you know Hideo Kojima,
I maybe shouldn't say this, but he wouldn't even do very many interviews for us. So.
No, I get it. Busy guy. Busy guy.
He is busy. He's busy. Yeah.
He's in his own headspace.
If we got Norman Reedus, then he would follow him here.
There
No
you
problem.
go. Yeah, for sure. Oh, if you made it this far in the show, you must like what you hear. And if you do like what you hear, you could always interact with us on our social media. We're on Instagram at listoff podcast, on Twitter at listoff_podcast, or you can email us at listoffpodcast@gmail.com. And big news, we are opening up a t-shirt shop. I'm currently working on it at the time of recording, but it will be open by the time this episode airs, and that'll be available at Teespring. The link to the shop will be in the show notes.
That's cool. So we do have a show for next week, which I am pulling up now. It is our worst box arts we're doing. So we did the best box arts. We're going to take a look at the worst box arts this time around. So that'll be a fun show.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah. But as always, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. And we will see you next week. Bye.
See.